Marcellus Williams. Pardons. Racism. What do these three things have to do with each other? Well, apparently absolutely everything, because wouldn't you know it, I wake up bright and early on a Monday night, and what do I see online? Everyone is screaming wall to wall about pardons and this random black guy from Missouri. I swear, if Twitter were any metric for real life, a Venn diagram of these three terms would just be 3 concentric circles. So to save you time on what in the world is going on, I spent about 3,000 hours stretched across however many days it took to upload this to give you the critical information you need on this pressing societal ill. But before I get into that, if you like this episode of Balance Takes, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another video, and follow me on X, or I'll go back in time and make sure Rosa Parks sits on top of the bus. So all Tuesday and well into Wednesday, people have been word vomiting all kinds of takes on Twitter. From this one saying the death penalty shouldn't exist, to this one from Derek Johnson of the NAACP. Today, Missouri Governor Parson decided to take the life of Marcellus Williams, an innocent man who did not commit murder. What sort of message does this send to people of Missouri and to people across the nation? Hashtag Marcellus Williams deserved to live. A man was lynched today.
I need a long vacation.
And if you saw my last video talking about this very issue, you already know how ridiculous this is. I'll leave a link to it in the description. But the super relevant part of that video that applies here is this definition of lynching. Did the governor of Missouri or a judge or executioner literally come out and say that Marcellus Williams must be executed for the crime of being black? No. Is there a tradition of giving people the death penalty who murder people? Also, no. In fact, I'd say we have a tradition of letting them live. Far too many. Was it under the pretext of serving justice? Well, I mean, I guess. You could somewhat make that argument. But I'm fairly certain this is focusing on the whole mob justice part, not just the state lawfully giving executions. So if I'm really generous, I think it may be 2 out of 4, at most. But what did happen? And why is everyone so surefire hopping mad? Well, I did some really boring research. And that's what you're here for, right? As a side note, when researching this, I actually found there were 2 executions on the same day, and there was no publicity for a second one. I had an entire blurb talking about this piece of inhuman debris, but I cut it for time reasons. Just know that he also deserved the death penalty, and if race were a factor in the supposedly systemically racist America, then it's weird to me that an obviously white man was executed in Texas on the same day, and no one cares.
And you can stick that in your pipe and smoke it.
I'll leave a link to that story in the description in case you're curious about it. But anyway, back to the reason you're here. On August 11th, 1998, Williams drove his grandfather's Buick LeSabre to a bus stop and caught a bus to University City. Once there, he began looking for a house to break into. Williams came across the home of Felicia Gale. He knocked on the front door, but no one answered. Williams then knocked out a window pane near the door, reached in, unlocked the door, and entered Gale's home. He went to the second floor and heard water running in the shower. It was Gale. Williams went back downstairs, rummaged through the kitchen, and found a large butcher knife, and waited. Afterwards, he waited till Gale came out of the shower, and when Gale came downstairs, he stabbed her multiple times, including in the arm and the neck, and killed her. Afterwards, he left the residence with Felicia Gale's laptop, her purse, and her carrying case, and, well, all the stuff that was inside. Afterwards, he met up with his then-girlfriend, Laura Asaro, who noticed him acting suspiciously and had bloodstains on his shirt and neck, which Williams, of course, just shrugged off. He made up an excuse, saying he was just in a fight.
No, I'm good. It's a flesh wound.
Williams, with her there, disposed of his clothes, stuffs them into a backpack, and tosses them in a sewer. Later in the day, his girlfriend Laura found the purse, Gale's belongings, and her ID card, and the laptop, which he still had in the car, and demanded to know what exactly happened. Which, like every really good murderer, Williams just admits on the spot that, well, he killed Gale, stole her belongings.
Guilty.
And added the nice little tidbit that if Laura told anyone, he would unalive her and her children.
I'll do it again.
Okay. And this was all in the trial, according to testimony of Laura herself. Williams later sold the laptop that he stole from Gale to a man named Glenn Roberts. Now, keep that in mind because that becomes important later. Now, August 31st, a full 20 days later, Williams was arrested on completely unrelated charges and incarcerated in the same cell as a man named Henry Cole. Now, they stayed together in a cell for about a year, and sometime during this time, they both watched an unsolved mystery news event or news headline on TV about, well, the murder of Felicia Gale. After which, for whatever reason, this grade A murderer decides to inform Henry Cole that, well, he did it.
Guilty.
Now keep in mind, this is almost a full year later, because the murder happened in August of 1998, and his confession to this random inmate was in May of 1999. Now here's where it gets really bad for Williams, and is likely half the reason why everyone who touched the case decided to pass on pardoning, so stick with me. Cole, the guy who was Williams' cellmate, gets out of jail in June of that year, literally a month later, and immediately goes to the local police and tells them about Williams' confession. The police go out to Williams' grandfather's residence and find his vehicle, the Buick LeSabre. I have a picture of one here, but it's not exactly his vehicle. In the vehicle, they recover a post-dispatch ruler. Now, Felicia Gale was a reporter for an organization called the St. Louis Dispatch, and the ruler had the emblem of her news organization stamped on it. Yeah, I know. This guy wasn't very bright when it came to things to steal. Like, I get it. He probably just grabbed a whole bunch of stuff in the case and left, but come on, man. Don't leave the incriminating evidence in your car. Oh, and they found her calculator. The police also managed to track down Glenn Roberts, the guy I mentioned earlier that he sold the laptop to. Well, he still had the laptop. So up to now, this guy commits a murder, tells his girlfriend about it, threatens her, tosses his bloody clothes in the second most obvious place possible, and for some reason, keeps the evidence in his car for the next 20 days, sells a laptop to some other random guy, who also didn't get rid of it, and then Williams presumes to continue to commit more crimes, or the crimes he already committed just happened to catch up with him, so that then he gets thrown in jail. While in jail, he confesses... Where am I? I don't even know what number I'm on. While in jail, he confesses again to some random cellmate who, for whatever reason, waits a month to tell the police about it. Well, actually, I take that back. Maybe he's the smart one here. No need to be locked up with some crazy murderer that just confesses to you randomly what crimes he commits. Wait to leave first, then tell. So the police then track down his girlfriend, and lo and behold, she admits that, well, Williams confessed to her too. Now, somehow, the cops never found any of this before, which tells me that Williams must be the worst criminal in existence, because the police clearly don't have to do any legwork on this man. He's just constantly like,
guilty.
Now back on the timeline. This goes to trial. And yes, despite whatever you see online, it is a trial by jury. He gets convicted, and the lawyer tries to get the guy off by claiming that the other witness's testimony was hearsay, blah blah blah. There are supposedly inconsistencies in their testimonies, and questions in the state of mind about when Glenn Roberts was sold the laptop, whether or not he thought it was Laura's laptop, on and on and on. But the crux of the matter is that they both claimed Williams confessed, and the police found the evidence exactly where it's supposed to be. So the judge was like, nah. Oh, and if that wasn't enough, Williams also tried to escape after he got arrested for the murder and assaulted a security guard with a metal bar. The defense lawyer tried to get this not admitted into evidence and failed on that as well. Because keep in mind, on top of this, Williams also had a rap sheet, which includes what you might note as a nice escalation from burglary to robbery to assault to armed robbery to first-degree robbery to theft from motor vehicle and false imprisonment. Yeah, I'm sorry to all the people out there singing songs as this is supposedly a great example of racism, but if you know anything about how a lot of these criminals work, they don't just suddenly pop out of nowhere and start unaliving people. They have a history, either criminal or societal, a series of steps that lead them to murder. Either they have a long rap sheet of robberies and assaults, or neighbors caught them skinning kittens when they were 13 years old. This isn't some secret, people. It's a pattern of behavior. Or as I like to say in those criminal shows, the modus operandi. So, continuing on, the lawyer also tried to claim that the search of the Buick was illegal because the vehicle didn't actually belong to Williams. It belonged to his grandfather, and thus the police supposedly didn't have the authority to search it, but the court struck that down pretty easily because no matter who it belonged to, the grandfather still consented for the vehicle to be searched, so that went out the window. The lawyer then tried to say that the court was being too mean.
That's problematic.
It had allowed too much victim impact in the trial, which I think basically means that all of Williams' previous crimes and their impacts were also considered during this trial. And since it was a murder trial in Missouri, those things are allowed in court as an evidence of a pattern, as I stated earlier. Then after some more mumbo jumbo that really isn't that interesting, the jury finds the defendant guilty and the court issues the death penalty. Now, in any normal world, this is an open shut case, but we don't live in a normal world, do we? You know there's going to be drama. So let's get to the drama.
Time to go down below into the liquid abyss.
Now, after this trial, they spent the next basically 20 years getting stays of execution by claiming racism, mistrials, and everything under the sun. Eventually, even the original prosecutor came out against the execution, and many organizations spent tons of money lobbying against it. The most controversial issue started when it came out that the DNA that was on the knife didn't actually match Williams' DNA.
Uh-oh, traffic jam on Route 3.
But the problem is, which you probably know from the video up to now, is that the case never hinged on DNA in the first place. So just like everything else, the evidence or lack of the evidence was deemed irrelevant, and when it went to the Missouri Supreme Court and eventually the U.S. Supreme Court, they denied it. They denied the stay of execution and denied the appeal. Now online, There is a vast litany of lies and just grasping at straws. But for the purpose of time, I'm only going to get to the top 5 that I found that were the most egregious. That leads me to lie number 1. People claim that the DNA on the knife did not belong to Marcellus Williams. Spoiler alert, it doesn't matter. DNA never really came up in the trial. It was pretty clear from the evidence around the entire circumstance that Williams committed the crime. And the DNA which did show up on the knife belonged to the prosecutor himself, who handled the knife while he was preparing his witnesses for the trial. Now, the prosecutor claimed that he thought the forensics were done with handling all the evidence, and he was likely asking the witnesses if they had seen that particular knife before, and that's why he was handling it, preparing their testimonies. But in doing so, he ruined whatever DNA evidence could have been recovered from it. And at the time, because this was in 2003, there weren't exactly best practices on handling evidence in general, and especially when it comes to DNA. Now, keep in mind, that's not a, oh, Williams is innocent, or a, oh, the blood under her fingernails didn't match Williams' DNA, or any such rumors. Those are completely false. Lie number 2. All that might be true, song, but no one should get the death penalty. Well, then you'd be echoing the same sentiment that many others have, including that of the victim's family, ironically enough.
Oh, okay.
But that's an entirely separate argument from the actual trial itself. Because in order to uphold that standard, instead of chasing individual cases, the entire justice system as a whole would have to be looked at on a state-by-state basis. Because each state has different death penalty laws and different thresholds for it qualifies, and different ways that the death penalty can be allowed and in what circumstances, and how it can be administered. Now, in my personal opinion, not enough people actually face the death penalty for the crimes they commit every year, but that's a separate issue for a separate video entirely, if I ever even get to it. Now, the victim's family isn't exactly saying that Williams is innocent. That's not exactly true. From what I found online, they're more so claiming that there may be doubt and that the death penalty should be done away with, period. Which isn't the same thing as saying he's innocent, but that has nothing to do particularly with the actual trial itself, or with how justice was carried out. Frankly, the state has no incentive to listen to the victims' families in this case, or to the advocacy group like the Innocence Project, which spent I don't know how many millions of dollars lobbying for this man to be removed from death row. As far as the state is concerned, it was a just trial, it was appealed 15 times, we're done. And that brings me to lie number 3. A juror was removed from the trial for being black. False! Trial attorney who tried the 2001 case said that he removed one black prospective juror because he looked like Williams. Now, he was asked specifically about whether or not he removed the juror because of his race, and he said, and I quote, "No, absolutely not." He then went on to say that he believed the jury, composed of 11 white people and 1 black person, was fair. Now, you have to keep in mind, prospective jurors are not selected jurors. Prospective jurors are removed for all kinds of reasons. But essentially, anything that could potentially biased a juror one way or the other gets screened out long before even getting to the final selection process, where if I remember correctly, the prosecution and the defense then further have the right to remove even more jurors during that final selection. So people telling you this is about racism and it just magically came to light years later, I'm sorry, they're either lying to you or perpetuating a lie. And if you've been one of the people spreading that,
stop it. Get some help.
Lie number 4. Williams should be spared because the jury that was shown the lack of DNA evidence said they wouldn't have convicted Williams if they knew then what they know now.
No, really?
Yeah.
Well, this one is just illogical right out of the gate. You're telling me that 20 years later, after advocacy groups, social media influence, lies being spun left and right by different factions, and personal life changes, that if you heard some specific piece of evidence during a sanitized trial, you would have acted differently? Okay. Is that a surprise? No. That's not shocking at all. Plus, the feelings of the jurors now have no bearing on the original trial. It doesn't matter. To those that were frantically spreading that message on social media, it is utterly irrelevant. Lie number 5. Mike Parsons, the Missouri governor, is a racist.
Racist, I'm serious.
Now, this is the silliest contention, and it has several prongs, but the summary is basically that Williams' life was only in the hands of a white man, and thus, white man bad. This is false. Not only did the case go through several appeals and stays of execution to prevent the death penalty across 20 plus years, but it was also taken to the Missouri Supreme Court, also unanimously rejected the appeal. Take a look at the makeup of the Missouri Supreme Court here. See if you notice how many are not all white men. Ah, yes. All white men. Definite. And afterwards, it went to the United States Supreme Court, and guess which non-white male justices voted to reject the last-minute appeal? That's right, Amy Barrett and Clarence Thomas. And lastly, you might wonder why this picked up steam suddenly, and in my opinion it was because it was a perfect trifecta of race, religion, and virality. For race, Williams was obviously black, and that fed into the niche need for some to feel there was some injustice being done. For religion, well, during his last 24 years in prison, he converted to Islam, so a large number of people around the world that shared that faith suddenly resonated to wanting one of their brothers to be let free. And virality, of course, because celebrities and politicians who just can't resist a chance to morally preen and appear superior to the rest of us flooded social media frantically with ridiculous lies and missives about the situation, launching this to the top of the charts in no time flat. I could go through a bunch of these, but this video is entirely too long as it is, so you get a 2-for-1 deal. Mark Hamill and Cori Bush. Pause the video if you want to see their statements, which basically amount to justice system bad, America bad, rest in power. So cringe, by the way, but it amounts to whatever, because, well, Marcellus Williams' life ended the same way he lived. It was taken from him. I like this reply below, which says, "You care about the woman he stabbed 43 times? She had a name, and it was Felicia Gale," which highlights one of the major problems with this entire topic. No more is our country considering the ramifications of letting guilty people free, or discussing the difference between presumed guilt, assumed innocence, and proven guilt. Now we're merely picking our factions before even hearing the story, and then copy-pasting our biases onto reality and claiming those biases are evidence, and in some cases, claiming they're factual history. Nowhere in any of this is the thought of the poor woman who walked downstairs and got stabbed to death 43 times. Among all the people claiming Williams is innocent, I didn't see a single solitary reaction, any platform, of someone wondering or trying to figure out who this mysterious third person could possibly be that stabbed and unalived Felicia Gale. No one talked about it. No one cared, because it wasn't important. What was important was their self-imposed sense of moral justice. Not actual justice, not due process, which would necessarily have included finding the real killer. You know, because that's one thing that would definitely have exonerated Marcellus Williams, if you found who actually did it, but no one cared about that. They only cared about the story so much to push their ideas of supposedly systemically racist America and their beliefs that the death penalty just shouldn't exist. Nothing else beyond that mattered to them. So the next time a lot of these same people come to you in person or on social media and say, "Oh no, popular terrible thing is happening," just nod your head and smile. Hey guys, thanks for sticking with me. I know this video is kind of long, and I did my absolute best to keep it as brief as possible. I've definitely heard the feedback that some of the videos could be shorter, and believe me, my editors would love that. Moving forward, I'm definitely going to be trying to make things more concise and more entertaining for you, the viewer. But regardless, if you like this kind of content, be sure to check out more of it, like the video I did just before this one, which ironically was also about race and pandering. And be sure to leave a few words of encouragement or criticism in the comment section down below, and I'll see you again next time. Bye!